people that sit at the back first. Just kidding. But no, feel free, guys. There's not many people. Come forward. Yeah, honestly, come forward. Yeah, and especially as I'm not going to be using the mic. So if you sit at the back, I'm going to whisper on purpose. And that way we can make. Yeah, that way we can make it meaningful today rather than just passive. Yeah, because I like to get it interactive. Hey, Naomi. Hey, good morning. And we've got a great opportunity to do that with a small group. So, on tomorrow I'm speaking on the main stage at 2 o'clock, I think, first stage after lunch. I'm not going to cover a lot of what I speak, yesterday or the day before or today in terms of what I've got on the main stage, because I've got some stuff I really want to help the room with on there. But this is a great opportunity, to get interactive and sort of get down into what's meaningful for you guys. Right? Because we've all got our own stories, we've all got our own lives. And the last thing I want you to do is to walk out of here with an expensive notebook, because then nothing happens. Yeah, so we'll take a journey over the next 29 minutes and 50 seconds, and see where we head.
Yeah, you mind if I just open up for you for a couple minutes?
Say again?
Do you mind if I open up for?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love you to.
Absolutely.
All right, let me have a little sit.
Yeah.
You might want to use the mic. That's all good.
Yeah. I was yelling. Pretty fun last night. Good morning.
Morning.
Are you guys excited for the second day of Anarchapulco?
Yeah. Woohoo! Yeah. Hell yeah.
Man, there's no place I would rather be than right here with you guys. I'm so excited. And today's a really powerful day. And I put Mr. Peter Sage first because some of the work that he's doing is really important. He's all about transformation. And I think that's what we need as a community, me personally as well, as we take these ideas to our community, to our families. We got to become more powerful people who can connect with other humans. So I think he is a great example of that, very successful businessman and someone who trains people all around the world. So I'm really grateful to introduce your speaker for this morning, Mr. Peter Sage. Please welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Thanks, brother. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of the great things and the opportunities I get doing what I do is to be able to meet incredible people, and not just the people that I'm gracious enough for, that have given me their time this morning, but also people like David, who I got to spend some time with yesterday and connect with, and just when you put like-minded people together, you have synergy, and that's such an underrated word, because the hardest walk to walk is the walk where you're on your own. If you really want the fastest key to transform, then my suggestion is to check who you hang with, because we're fighting something a lot of the time called the law of conformity. There's a reason that I don't watch the news. There's a reason that I do not engage in the media. There's a reason I couldn't tell you if the woman's still Prime Minister in England or not. Right? I have no idea. I don't care what's going on with Brexit. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Trump's still in the White House. Otherwise, I might have heard about it. But I have zero interest or inclination to allow what's going on in Dramaville into my movie. I'm in charge of my script. And if you don't take charge of your own script, then somebody else who doesn't have your best interests at heart will start writing stuff in there for you. Have you noticed that? Right? So the fastest way to transform is to get around like-minded people, which is why conferences like this are great. It's why the networking aspect of places like this is great. I'm already meeting some great people. And for you to understand that the law of conformity is absolutely real. If you hang around with 9 recreational drug users, I've got news for you, you're likely going to become the 10th. If you hang around with 9 motivated people that come from a place of life that says how we can, not why we can't, you're probably going to become the 10th. Does that make sense? And that's not about free will. Free will is simply the ability for you to make a decision in the moment. But there is a whole load of factors behind that play out that most of the time we're not aware of. When it comes to evolution, the brain has evolved in some really great attributes, but unless we know how and why they operate, we can fall on the wrong side of it. I'll give you an example. Right? We are, as a species, we do a lot of things out of passion. We do few things out of logic, unfortunately, and reason. But most of what we do, a vast majority of what we do as human beings, we do out of habit. Our thoughts are habitual. And the way that the brain works with that is this. You have something that separates you from most of the other sentient beings on this planet, something called a prefrontal cortex. And that prefrontal cortex essentially controls critical thinking. And guys, I've elected not to use the mic there, so if you want to come forward, please do. We've got enough places at the front. Yeah, I don't often spray, so you're pretty much safe.
You sprayed me once.
Yeah, no comment. Yeah, Sasha's in the house. And can you hear me okay at the back? Yeah, perfect. So this prefrontal cortex is responsible for making critical decisions. And that serves a really useful purpose when it comes to figuring stuff out. But we have an entire part of the brain that is working far more off reflex, what's known as the first brain, or the limbic brain, or the reptilian brain. Yeah, it depends on what label you want to give it. And its job is to receive commands that have been put in the prefrontal cortex often enough that because it thinks we're smart up here, clearly we've assessed it, that it's important to keep doing it, so we'll just take that away from the prefrontal cortex and make it something called a habit. Now that's brilliant because it means you don't have to learn to walk every day. But when we start thinking poor thoughts, bearing in mind it doesn't care what the nature of the input is, our thoughts are the most habitual things about us. Every behavior is preceded by a thought. So if you've got lousy behaviors and you're trying to change the behavior without changing the thinking behind the behavior, you're swimming upstream. Does that make sense? So if we want to live our best life, the first question we want to ask ourselves is, it's not the diet that we're eating, what is the diet that we're thinking? And that has a huge level of impetus based upon the people we surround ourselves with and what we allow into our awareness. Now the challenge, and for many of you saw my last talk, you know I like to walk. All right? And though I looked at David Icke on stage yesterday, I thought I'm probably not going to be able to jump off that one. Yeah, we'll see. But one of the challenges is that if you are in a place where they only serve fast food, you're going to be having a challenge when it comes to wanting to be healthy. If you're in a place where the mental diet around you is junk food, you're going to have a hard time trying to live a life of inspiration, positivity, growth, and contribution. So, as I said, the most important diet is not the food you put in your mouth, it's the thoughts you choose to think in your head. And so, the news and the media, and for those that haven't seen my video on it, it's far better than me take all the time up here to go off on my rant as to why it's complete poisoning of your brain through an agenda that isn't the agenda you think it is. If you think the news is there to report what's going on, you're in Disneyland. But if you are watching the news or the media or you're exposed to it, you are deluding yourself if you think you can live a positive, happy, fulfilling life. Why? Because as human beings, by design, we are cybernetic organisms, which means that we are programmable. Again, fantastic. Means we don't have to learn to walk every day. But the question here, guys, is this. You do not get to choose biologically, neurologically, evolutionarily, whether or not you are programmable. Sorry, that decision's off the table. The only decision you have is, how do I want to be programmed? Does that make sense? And if you don't answer that question consciously, there is a lot of industries out there that have a different agenda to your health and mental well-being that will answer that question for you. And take Visa or MasterCard. Right? So how do we then start being conscious? Because for those that still make up the excuse, oh, I can choose what I want to let in. I still read the newspapers because I can choose whether to be affected positively or negatively. Well, nice try. What you're saying is, with the 5% of the time that I'm using my neocortex, for the 5% of the time that I'm walking around conscious, I have the ability to open the door and close the door on what I choose in that moment to accept or reject. But how many of us are walking around conscious 100% of the time? Wrong, but thank you for playing. How many of you have driven to work on your day off? How many of you arrived at the supermarket and think, how the hell did I get here? Right? 95% of the time, that incredible brain that works off habit and is computing thousands and millions of calculations that you're completely consciously unaware of, is looking after you and serving you, is operating whether you want it to or not. Now, I kind of know that because I don't have to set my iPhone alarm every night for 3 a.m. to remind myself to beat my heart. But the fact remains, 95% of the time we are what I call sleeping awake. That's okay, you can't fight that. But wouldn't it be far better to learn how to have the 95% work for you instead of against you? And that's my invitation for you today by allowing you. I'm going to share with you some stuff today around working with metaphysics, a little bit about the quantum field, a little bit about how we manifest stuff, and share with you some information that very, very few people are talking about so you have an understanding. Because when it comes to consciousness, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this on the main stage tomorrow, it's very nebulous. Yeah, in the New Age world, on one side you've got the esotericism linked with the divine, let's all hold hands, sing kumbaya. Right? And a lot of the rational thinking there can't really get into that. That's on the extreme one side. On the extreme of the other side, you have biology, which says consciousness is a byproduct of brain function. And if you've not figured it out yet, that isn't the case. The brain doesn't produce consciousness any more than a television produces programs, or a radio produces music. So if we're to understand a little bit about how to interact, I need to demystify a little bit what the Newtonian paradigm that's been so prevalent over the last 100 years. Yeah, and David Icke did a great job on that yesterday. And I'm a fan of David. I love David, and I have a slightly different approach to his approach. He's exceptionally passionate, and I realize that he has to go through 3 hours of sort of fear-based scaremongering to slap people awake that are so indoctrinated into the hypnosis before then saying, now go to sleep tonight and open your heart and live from love. It's an interesting philosophy in terms of mechanism, but the message is underlying very important. But if we look at the Newtonian paradigm, most Newtonian scientists today are not scientists, unfortunately. They're dogmatists. And the reason for that is that true science really should state the following. I am going to continually update and evolve my hypothesis in order to fit the consistent data. Now, what modern science does is says, no, I'm going to ignore all of the data that doesn't fit my hypothesis. That's not science, that's dogma. And one of the reasons for that, when you understand what's really going on, apart from the hidden agendas and conspiracy theories, which again, I don't really let too much into my movie, right, is that these people have gone to school and they've spent 4 years plus going to get a piece of paper signed by somebody they never met to validate their intelligence. Sorry, I never suffered the disadvantage of college. And they are now linking that to their identity. Now, the second you link your identity to something, and that identity is threatened, it threatens your very sense of significance. Does that make sense?
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
Yeah, so if you link your identity to something, and that identity is threatened, you're not a scientist, you're a dogmatist. Rather than be open to the fact that, well, hang on, that sounds like it makes sense that I'm now ignoring data that's consistent, and we should look at things like the placebo effect and spontaneous remission and statistically verifiable aspects of using intention to affect reality. Yeah, maybe we should look at, no, that's all anomaly, and we ignore that because that's all woo-woo shit. All right? Now, they're not doing it rationally. That would be science. They're doing it to protect their sense of identity, because if that's threatened, it triggers the primary fear that we all have. And that is the fear that we're not enough. That we're not good enough, tall enough, short enough, good looking enough, rich enough, whatever it is, fill in the blank. We all have a blank to fill in at that level, otherwise our egos are playing hide and seek with reality. And so, if you want to peel back the layer of the onion one more time, the primary fear is, I'm not enough, and therefore I won't be loved. So if we start to see that Newtonian science right now is trapped in 100 years of dogma. In 1920 we knew that the double slit experiment validated that particles are not particles. But we'll just ignore that because that's an anomaly. And that would invalidate my degree on the wall. And if you think about it, this is what cracks me up the most. Newtonian science is the most improvable hypothesis. Because what we're saying is there's an objective world out there, and I'm separate from it. And quantum physics says, and the virtual reality model and the digital reality model says, well, no. If you observe, or more accurately measure, because it doesn't have to be a human observation, if you measure something, you said, David, yesterday, collapses the waveform into the particle. It goes from possibility to actuality. If you don't observe something, it moves back into a waveform. Ah, well, that shouldn't happen under a Newtonian paradigm. So is the moon there when you're not looking at it? Well, no, it's not. It's not rendered into your data stream. Whereas Newtonian physics says, no, there is an out there, and when we're not looking at it or measuring it, it's still there. Well, how the hell do you prove that? You can't. The most improvable hypothesis on the planet. Because the only way you can test is by looking at it. And so, it's a shame, but we are moving forward. To quote the great Feynman, science progresses one funeral at a time.
One minor clarification. You say improvable, unprovable. I was thinking improve as in make better.
Oh, okay. Improvable. I like that. So improving.
Yes.
Yeah. But unprovable hypothesis.
That's what you were trying to get at. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And I also didn't go to college for English either. I know. But no. So understanding that science where it is right now, if you are surrendering your own level of intellect to a belief system that is being imposed on you that is 100 years out of date, that's the first thing I want to flag up. In other words, nobody has the right to impose on you anything other than what you feel is your subjective experience, because life is a subjective experience. Even the belief that life is objective is a subjective belief. Go figure that one out, Mr. Whitecoat. Yeah? So if we understand that being able to see that we are part of a subset called the physical matter reality, physical universe, and because we've been very good at observing the physical universe, we've kind of reverse engineered what the rule sets are. There's three primary rule sets that govern that, which is our sciences, which is the physics, chemistry, biology, for example. Physics dealing with particles, chemistry dealing with molecules, and biology dealing with cells. And we have understood the rules that govern that so well, we can repair a human body or put a man in space. Cool stuff. But we need to understand that we are bigger than that. We live in a subset that is part of a superset, a governing superset. And that governing superset is the one word that science hates, because science only deals with the objective. If it's subjective, it doesn't like it. And that 13-letter word that science runs from, that governs the entire superset, it'll never integrate. And you already know what that 13-letter word is, right? Consciousness. You are consciousness. You are experiencing. In fact, I'll go as far as say, the only thing you can do in life is experience. And if you want to take it one step further, the only thing you can experience is the act of experiencing. Everything else is story. And we get wrapped around the axle so much about what's going on in the story, do we not? When the reality is, you're all starring in the movie of your life. You're all, the prime lead actor. And when you finish this movie, guess what? This character that you're playing right now, also known as your name, is going to walk off set in your final scene and go pick up another script. Where were you before you were playing this movie? Somebody says, well, why can't I remember my other movies? Because that would confuse you in this one. Right? You don't want to go on set as a Hollywood A-lister and you have all your lines to remember and you're going and you're playing this character and you're still trying to remember all the lines from your previous movie. That wouldn't work. So, now, if we're here for a specific reason, and I don't see anything in the universe that doesn't have a purpose, then start asking ourselves a bigger question. Why are we here? Well, my take on that is very simple. We're here to grow up. I don't mean physically. We don't get to choose that. That's part of the rule set. But we're here to grow up emotionally, we're here to grow up spiritually, and we're here to evolve into higher levels of consciousness. Now, it's not a race. Some of us, like myself, probably been in the slow learning club for quite a while. And for others, you're all on individual journeys. So comparative thinking at that point is a way to make you feel less than rather than more than. I'd avoid it. But when it comes to trying to interact with the superset, that's where a lot of the personal growth New Age stuff is. Things like The Secret, and most people in The Secret, good friends of mine. And we've that there's very few people really giving some practical advice on how to bridge the two between the superset and the subset. Does that make sense? So I want to share with you something now that I think will be useful. All right. How are we taught most of the time how to manifest? Anyone? Any ideas? Yeah, what's some of the things that we...
Work.
Say again?
Working.
Work. See now,
Success.
yeah, so working is about limiting yourself to the Newtonian paradigm in the subset and going out and physically moving stuff around to try to elbow your way through the crowd, carve your way in, and make it happen. I call that being in by me, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen by me, which is far better than the to me mentality, which is the victim mentality. Oh, everything happens to me. But what I want to share with you is, how do you get into through me, where life flows through you? That's a whole different game. And I'll explain a little bit more about this tomorrow on the main stage. But and as you were the first person to put your hand up there, I want to give you a little copy of my book. On next, I like to reward the first person that engages. Little note for tomorrow. Anyone wants a free book off the first in the main stage? But yes, Inside Track. I'm not going to give it a shameless plug that says it will change everybody's life if you buy it. Available from all good online bookstores. But there you go, sir. If you see me at the end, I'll see me at the end. I'll sign that for you. Oh, no. But yes. How do you cross the bridge between it? So I want to give you some practical stuff here so you can leave and have something that shifts rather than just some intellectual more knowledge, because knowledge doesn't transform. So I want to share this with you. The human body is made up of around about 50 to 100 trillion cells, depending on your sort of personal size. Now, each of those cells on the outer layer have something called a receptor site, which reacts with and engages with the environment on its outside. So if you can imagine the body having being like a soup, the flavor of that soup determines what happens on those receptor sites. Understand? Just like your skin on the outside of the body reacts to its outer environment. Yeah, right now I'm going slightly better color than I was in England. I'm very happy about that. Yeah? But if I was to stay in England for too long, my skin would start changing color again, correct? So my skin is adapting to the environment. Now, if we continue that metaphor, and we say that inside the body you have a certain amount of weather patterns. Now, every thought that you think produces a chemical. Every thought in your head produces neuropeptide, a different hormone, or a signal that controls the weather inside your body. That's what I said in my previous talk a couple of days ago. If you want the secret of happiness, pretty simple. Think happy thoughts. Game over. You want to don't be depressed anymore? Stop thinking depressing thoughts. Oh no, that's too simple. No, I need a pill. Right? So if you understand that every time you think, you produce a chemical. That chemical runs through its cycle in the body, in the bloodstream. The effect of that chemical we feel and interpret as an emotion. You think angry thoughts, you will produce the cortisol or adrenaline-based reactions and the neuropeptides that will correspond to having a feeling that comes up that we label anger. Now at that point, the mind's job is to do what it does best, to justify behavior that is associated to your current emotional state. Your mind is a master of being able to come up with justifications to keep you attached to your current emotional state. If you've not figured that out yet, please make note. In other words, when you're angry, is it easy to think a forgiving thought? No. When you're in a fatigued state, is it easier to get out of bed or find a reason to press the snooze button? Yeah, your mind will figure out a way to justify your behavioral actions in accordance with your current emotional state. Now, when you know that that's its job, yeah, you don't have to take it personally. You don't beat yourself up. Oh, it's just my mind doing that thing again. And now get out of bed and go to the gym.
Can the reptilian brain inject thoughts? Of course it can. It can inject thoughts into your prefrontal cortex and bring a thought to your mind. So that could stimulate, isn't it a positive feedback loop where your subconscious, the habitual part of you, can actually put something in your mind that you're conscious of and therefore create a chemical reaction to that conscious thought.
Yes.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, the question was, can the subconscious or the reptilian brain, your unconscious, actually project thoughts into your mind? Yes, that's its job a lot of the time. But if you're conscious of it and not sleeping awake, you can override it with conscious thought. Now, again, thoughts are habitual. So Here's the point I'm getting at, guys. This is why we self-sabotage. This is why people find it hard to manifest. This is why we start off with good intentions and never follow through. Are you ready for the secret? Yeah. Right? Because very few people are talking about this. This is science, not, as I say, conjecture. So all of the receptor sites in your cells will evolve over time to match the environment that it's in. So sticking with the weather analogy, if you're thinking negative thoughts and you're putting cold weather in the body, those cells are essentially wearing scarves and gloves. Make sense? If you're thinking positive thoughts and you're putting sunshine into the body, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, those cells will start adapting their receptor sites to that environment. They'll start wearing, budgie smugglers and mankinis and all that kind of fun stuff and bikinis. Right? I've got a weird imagination. All right, so here's where one of the other rules of nature take over. We know that nature takes the path of least resistance. We live in an electromagnetic world, and therefore if we then go and put an electrical circuit together, it's a complicated circuit, but there's one short in there, what happens? Does the circuit work? No, instantly shorts out. Now why? How? How does it know that? Well, it happens because it's part of the rule set. The rule set governs that electricity takes the path of least resistance. Right? I'm not getting into the labels as to who programmed that or who wrote the algorithm. Right? It's a different conversation. But for now, we know that's part of the rule set. But what we also know is this, that the electricity doesn't run down all of the different permutations, run it through an Excel spreadsheet and says, that's the easiest one, let me do that. No, it just knows. Part of the rule set. But that's a governing law. So, how does that affect us? Well, if you've been thinking habitually negative thoughts because you've been watching the media thinking that you can control how you're being programmed and the 95% of the time that you can't, and your body is used to the negative cold weather inside, so your default mentality is more negative than positive, more why I can't than how I can, more lack of self-worth than high self-worth. Make sense? And you come to a seminar, you listen to some crazy English guy at the front of the room tell you how you should think more positive thoughts. You say, wow, I'm all inspired, great. And you go out and you make a commitment, you have resolve. I'm going to go out and I'm going to quit watching the news. I'm going to quit hanging around with people that say I can't and start finding people that talk about how we can. And all of a sudden, you start thinking different thoughts that produces different chemicals that affect different weather within the body. Follow me so far? Yes. At that point, we have a challenge. The challenge is, because of the rule of nature takes the path of least resistance, you've got two things that are going on. You've got 50 to 100 trillion cells that are wearing hats, scarves, and gloves, and you're putting in sunshine. At which point, two things can happen. Either 50 trillion cells have to go down to Bloomingdale's and swap their wardrobe. Or you can change your thoughts, which is the path of least resistance. And what happens, just because it's part of the rule set, is your cells will say, whoa, hang on a minute, it's getting warm in here. And you want us to go get rid of our winter wardrobe and go buy sunglasses. Dude, that ain't gonna happen. So they start sending messages to the body to rebalance through the path of least resistance, which manifests as negative self-talk. And there's two pathways it sends it. One is straight up the spinal column into the back of the cerebrum. And we start now thinking, oh, well, I can't really do it. Can I? Am I really worth it? Is it really right? Oh, what if, something, maybe mum and dad was right, maybe this. I'm just a schmuck, I can't deal with it. I need to go to another seminar. Get the idea? And all that's happening is that your body is essentially waging chemical warfare against you. Not because it doesn't like you, not because it doesn't love you, because it's part of the rule set. And that period lasts only about 3 to 4 weeks before, if you keep putting in the weather, they'll turn around and say, something? John's serious this time. We better get shopping. And they'll start moving, and changing their receptor sites. And they'll start manufacturing different coatings and different receptor sites on the outside of the cell to match that weather. Very simple example. If you've never drank coffee, I don't drink coffee, right? I know most people in America don't know what that's like. But if you've never drank coffee and you give somebody a double espresso, it's fun to watch. If you drink coffee like most people drink coffee, you can drink an espresso before bedtime and still sleep. Right? Because the cells have adapted to a high cortisol, high acidic environment.
I read a good study once. It's exactly what you're saying. I think it was like 800 people, and they had to have been clinically depressed for about 5 years. And in about 5 to 6 weeks' time, all they did was take these people, put them in a 360 mirror for 5 minutes a day, just said positive things to themselves. It was like 84% of people no longer had to take any time.
Yeah, depression
just saying good things.
is not clinical.
Yeah.
Right? The depression cloud doesn't come along and rain on you. The cancer cloud doesn't come along and rain on you. Right? It's something we do to ourselves through habitual patterns of thinking or lifestyle choices, etc. Yeah, a minute amount is genetics. And you can override genetics through epigenetics based upon how you think and feel. So, and I've got about 2 minutes left here, guys. I want to bring this to a close so you've got something practical. Right, so, if you say, right, I want to go out there, I want to create a difference. I want to come from a life of what I am worth it, not I'm not worth it. Why? Because we've got 2 bank accounts in life. We have a financial bank account, but we've also got another bank account we weren't told about. It's the emotional bank account. And here's how it works for most people. Their financial bank account follows their emotional bank account. Have you noticed that? Emotional bank account's down here. What happens to financial bank account's down. What happens to their emotional bank account? Get paid, get a deal. Bitcoin doubles in value. All right, what happens to the financial bank account goes up. What happens to the emotional bank account? Follows. Here's what we weren't told. Your emotional bank account is a leading indicator, not a lagging indicator. If you want your financial bank account to go up, your emotional bank account has to go up first. You will then start raising your vibration, you'll start raising your sense of self-worth, you'll start raising the value you can add to the world, and guess what? You'll start attracting opportunities to be able to generate more value and be able to create more money. But if you leave here, and you're on a high, and in 2 weeks' time, all of those cells say, you know something, start reminding you of the time where your business studies teacher says you couldn't do business, or your friend said you weren't good enough, or your older brother gave you a comment, or your mum and dad didn't give you the love you thought you expected at the time. Whatever it may be, and they remind you of that because it's easier to get you to change your mind than 50 trillion cells to change their wardrobe. And as a result of that, if you can override it with literally 3 to 4 weeks, you will start switching the wardrobe. And then if you feel down one time, which is natural, we're human, you've got 50 trillion cells that'll turn around and say, dude, we ain't settling for that. Come on, perk up, you're better than this. We've got you back. Come on, we believe in you, let's go. And it'll be a place that you visit, not a place that you live. Does that make sense? And that is a very different way of being able to understand what's going on inside the body in terms of self-talk and manifesting, because here's the other thing, that's where I'll bring it full circle. If you really want to bring stuff into your awareness and affect the quantum field statistically to bring circumstances into your life, if you live with the emotional weather of what you want has already happened, your cells are now starting to run around as if you already own the house, as if you own the car, not that you want to own the house or the car. Then of course things have to match up. So it can do what can happen. Either 50 trillion cells have got to change their mind, or the universe can just bring you the opportunity to match up what's required. Path of least resistance. And all of a sudden you start attracting all the right people and all the right opportunities and all the right things. You still have free will to engage. That's part of the rule set. But at that point now, you're playing a different game. You're not in by me. You're not trying to struggle to make it happen. You're now moving into through me. Does that make sense? I'm a little limited on my time here today, guys. I'm going to be about to take questions, but I wanted to just share a little bit of insight in there. If you want to, I'm going to be drilling down a little bit more and sharing a lot more on this subject tomorrow from the main stage at 3 o'clock. And I promise you, I'm going to give you some insights in there that'll make you check. When you walk out tomorrow, you'll be a completely different person. I want to thank you for your time and everything today. I know it's been early morning. I love you guys. Thank you. And I'm here to take questions. Over to you. Thank you.
Did the time change? It was 2 o'clock, wasn't it?
2 o'clock tomorrow, yes. Main stage.
Main stage, 2 o'clock
2
tomorrow.
o'clock.
Yeah, don't have a heavy lunch.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Peter Sage.
Thanks, man.
Very powerful. Thank you, sir.
Anarchapulco. It's so hype, I'm trying to tell ya. This the event of the year and best vacation ever. Ron Carter, Jeffrey Tucker, just to name a few. Get your tickets, you don't wanna miss it. You should roll through. Talking politics to health and self-improvement to investing. So many things, not one thing. Learn how to live life unchained, yeah. 4 days vibing on the beach, time to connect. All about growth, way more than a conference. This is Anarchapulco, yeah. Let's go.
You ain't seen nothing yet.